Okay, whenever you're ready, Kaylee, if you want to just begin.
Hi, I'm Kaylee Bowen. I have done Copy on TV, which is a sitcom pilot. It's based on a comic I started writing at the beginning of this academic year, which is basically just a group of friends doing what you'd expect 18 to 19-year-olds do. The main plot of the first episode is two guys move into this student house with these two girls, and the two girls are basically opposites. However, because of the rule of opposites attract, the two girls end up falling in love with each other. I looked at what I needed to do to get into comedy writing, because that's what I really want to go into when I start actually working. So I looked at what to do to get into sitcom writing, what skills you'll need and stuff like that. Also, I looked at the famous people of sitcoms and where they started, how they started, and stuff like that. The main award you can get is a Primetime Emmy for Outstanding Comedy Series, and the reason Ofcom's picture's up there is because I planned on doing it as a post-watershed program, which means that basically a lot more stuff was allowed in it than would be pre-watershed, like some slight swearing and implied drug and violence. When I was coming up with my idea, I had 4 different ideas, which were Blue Giant, which is basically a Red Dwarf fan series, and it has, instead of 4 guys like Red Dwarf has, it has 4 women. House of Sins, which is basically 7 Deadly Sins helping a guy get his life back together. Beyond the Books, which is basically the idea of when you're in purgatory, the only thing you can really do is get a job and help monsters. And then Copy on TV, which is the idea I went with, because most people voted for that in my survey. I did this production purely because it was a mix of what I like and what I know certain people in our year like, and I based it off of most of these, and I basically knew what the characters were in my mind, so I started writing for the characters and the cast I had in my mind. It's on YouTube currently, and the main reason it's on YouTube is because YouTube has an age restriction system, which I can basically just age restrict the video if I feel like people that are way too young to be watching it are watching it, such as 10-year-olds. My target audience were basically the same age group as the characters in the production, because they'll understand what the characters are going through and stuff like that. Also, they wanted it to look grungy and dark and like it was a lived-in student house. My idea development, as you can see, took me a long process, which ended up being about 2 weeks of me going, what am I doing, why the hell am I doing this, how can I improve? And then you have the characters. Papa Wayne is a 5'5", 18-year-old goth chick. Her main inspirations are actually Daria, Tim from Space and people like that. She's also based on me a little bit, because the character in the comic that she is based on me. So she has certain things that I have, like autism, social anxiety and stuff like that. So she, in the comics she does go into detail about how her life is messed up because of the way that she is. Then you have Opal, her best friend, who is kind of the ultimate opposite to Harper's character. She's bubbly, she enjoys being around people, whereas Harper's more closed off and Harper's the one that goes, get away from me, Opal's the one that drags her out of her comfort zone. And she is basically these 5 characters mixed together. Then you have Stephen, who's based on Paris in second year. The reason I based him off Paris is because Paris is a madman who is usually a little bit messed up. So you can probably get where the crazed scientist vibe of the character comes from. And he is basically just a mix of all of these characters, plus a little bit of Paris's crazed persona himself. Then you have Frankie, whose name is actually a reference to Bill Nye, and he's based on these 8 characters. He's the character that looks a certain way but isn't what you expect him to be. Like, he looks like a mega geek, however he's probably the one that goes out partying the most. Then you have Tony. Tony's basically a jock with a drinking problem. He goes out every night, he gets drunk, he comes back, he wrecks the student house. That's his daily routine. He's mainly just this macho man who gets a little bit into his own head that he's meant to be a macho man instead of just a regular person. I feel like I could have done better if I had the cast I wanted, but because of time constraints and the fact that most of them were in second year doing their final major project, I feel like I lost out on the opportunity to use them, and by the end of it I was just like, I've got what I've got, might as well just move on. Any questions? And also, if you want to, can you view the trailer?
Show us the trailer, yeah, please.
If it works.
Hi, name's Franklin. Let's call me Frankie.
Hi, my name's Stephen.
Hi, name's Franklin. Let's call me Frankie.
Hi, my name's Stephen.
Until then, I am your guide to this crazy place called me and Tony.
What are you guys talking about? What do you want? Why am I upside down? What exactly is going on between you two?
Nothing. You, me, drinks. Tonight?
Cool. Any questions? I had a couple of questions actually.
Yeah.
You mentioned that the positive advantages of using YouTube.
Yeah.
Are there any kind of negative advantages of YouTube?
Negative advantages would be that anyone can really watch the video, because I did say age restriction, and a lot of people can lie about their age on the internet, which isn't very good. So even if I do put an age restriction on it, some people can still gain access without it being monitored and checked.
Okay. And you touched a little bit on, I think, when you were describing your characters
Yeah.
on the research that you did
Yeah.
to develop those characters. Did you find the research useful? What were the kinds of things that you looked at?
I looked at what you can do when you're 18, I looked at things that you can study at the Bucks University, which is where it was meant to be based. And I looked at how much you can get for certain jobs. And that helped me out, fleshing the characters out so that they looked more like real people and acted more like real people than just two-dimensional archetypes.
And did you find the research into the way that sitcom has developed over the
Yeah.
years, was that helpful to you?
Yeah, I went from looking at, I think Dad's Army was the earliest one I looked at, to things like Taxi, to things like Spaced, and then I think the most recent one was Fresh Meat that I looked at. And then I combined like the tropes that I liked from each one, went through like different things that I liked in the characters from each one, and added that into it.
Okay. And was there anything in particular that you picked out from any of those?
I think the main thing was just like the archetypes of certain characters and the way that you can present a certain archetype in so many different ways that you can really present a realistic character just by using an archetype.
Cool. Okay. Thank you very much. Well done.